Mike, serious question.
Okay.
Would you leave me bleeding to death in the jungle?
That's it? No context?
You took too long.
You're dead?
Apparently. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keith and Mike Watch Deep Space Nine, a little show where, if we're not funny to you, we're funny to us, at the very least. Today, we're talking about Season 6, Episode 16, Change of Heart. I can't believe we are now 3/4 of the way through Season 6.
I know.
We are so far along our journey here. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing all right, Keith. Happy belated Valentine's Day. It's sort of synchronicity, as we often say. My wife had come home for a visit from her show, and we were discussing Valentine's Day, which was a few days ago, and I was doing my usual rant about how I think it's BS and blah, 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 blah. But then I come downstairs and I realize it's sort of a very special Valentine's Day episode of Deep Space Nine, which had me having all kinds of thoughts and feelings and explorations that I thought about a little bit on the watch along, but really thought about this morning when I was walking the dog at 13 below zero. And we say this every week, but I mean it. I'm really interested to talk to you about this episode.
Yeah, I mean, because I think there are two things happening here. One is the episode proper, but then it's going to be an interesting discussion about like the moral quandary of the episode itself, which is fun. Yeah, I also am not a Valentine's person, but I am one of the very few privileged people in the world who got a box of sweet tarts from his ex-wife on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I mean,
that's how I roll.
I think that the idea of Valentine's Day, let's recognize love and such, is totally fine. I'm just more of I mean, at times I'm an acts of service person, but I don't like the feeling of obligation, right? If you have to go and get me a card, or you have to go and do something just because there's a holiday about it.
It's a money-making endeavor.
Yeah.
It's a corporate holiday.
That doesn't mean we can't. Well, you know what, dear wife? Today's discussion dedicated to you, CEO.
Oh, boy.
Not even excuse me, Chancellor.
Chancellor, wow. What a gift. I mean, it's a little bit like when my father gifted my mother 6-channel surround sound to watch movies loud, and she couldn't care less about sound, but what a gift.
Hey, listen, giving 5.1 surround is a gift we can all get behind.
I mean, to be fair, you gave it to me. Or I bought it from you, but at a discount. I mean, yeah. you Ferengi gifted it to me.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I Quark did. Keith, should we talk about last week's episode?
I think we should. Last week's episode, Honor Among Thieves. And here are the Patron comments. If you'd like to have me read your comment here on the YouTube, well, let me specify. I read everything that is posted on that. Mike reads, and Mike's responds to almost everything. But if you want me to read it aloud, you can join our Patreon at patreon.com/K&M, spell out that A-N-D, and join a whole bunch of this wonderful community of folks that we have here who talk and watch Mike do watch-alongs, and we do AMAs and all the usual spiel. We know how it is, but
I want to tell you, I asked ChatGPT to kind of summarize our content. And
our content?
Yeah. And first we had to spend some time because it was like, K&M is there's a lot of those, so it was
like, what the hell is that?
But long story short, it was relatively positive, but there was an adjective in there. Humorous was used quite often, and one thing I thought, an adjective that I will cherish because it's so accurate, is erratic.
All right, well, I want to know more about that, but we'll talk about that off air because we need to hear from, if we're erratic, our patrons, stable. For sure. And here is what they had to say about Honor Among Thieves. Joshua Cronin says, I like this episode because it isn't very Star Trek-y. I like the variety of stuff we get with Deep Space Nine. It keeps it interesting and fresh. Keith, your suggestion of changing the story is good. I like that as well. The idea of, as opposed to having Bixby or Bilby or whatever his name be high up in the organization, make him a real sad sack. Put him on the lowest rung. And then have O'Brien help him rise up.
Rise up. Everybody rise up.
I believe that could be considered as erratic. Joshua continues, but nonetheless, I don't mind watching this episode. Not the most strongest, but I give it 71 self-sealing stem bolts. Jason Moe says, I think Keith nailed it when he said this isn't really Star Trek. Sometimes it's cool when Star Trek tries something a bit off-brand or in a different genre, but I don't think it worked very well this time, unfortunately. 67 stem bolts. Also, my ears perked up when Mike mentioned using some Star Trek sounds as white noise for sleeping. I often do that too. I found a great 8-hour YouTube video which has that oh-so-cozy starship interior thrumming sound accompanied by just enough electronic chirps and beeps to let me imagine I'm in the crew quarters on the Enterprise and sends me right off to sleep after a very stressful day. It's nerdy as heck, but I love it. I should say, this is... If you were interested in that, and Jason, I know you already know, listen to our interview with my brother, who created some of those background hums for Voyager, and my uncle who created the ones. Everything you're listening to, my uncle created, and so you get to listen to like all of the layers of what that hum means. It's not just a static hum. There's so much storytelling and little bits and pieces of creating that noise. It's really...
I wish I had
really
written
fun.
it down, because there was a specific moment in this week's episode, and I thought to myself, I said it out loud, I'd love to know what Uncle Jim was doing at this moment to make that sound. I can't remember what it was, but if
he wasn't doing anything on this episode, because he was doing Voyager at this point.
I guess
But yes.
my point at the time was that the sound people
design.
were probably like, "Oy." Can't remember what it was.
Well, yeah. Well, every time you go into a new environment, you have to start with the hum. You have to start with the room noise. You have to start with whatever. And, you know, what Sean was talking about is every room, it's not just like the Deep Space Nine hum. Every room has a different hum. And
Well,
when
not
you're
only
tracking
that-
a character going through a door from one environment
Tracking.
to another, you have to
Someone calls
change
off
the
screen,
hum.
or they're through a door or whatnot. And what's crazy to me is if you're listening on cans, you can kind of somewhat hear what's happening. But once you sort of compress it through television and all that stuff, when you were watching it on TV, all of that work, all of that poor work,
I know.
is just
so much layering and so much work. But you have to start with that. You have to start with the sound of the room.
They were your brother. It might have been your brother. I don't think it was. No, I was listening to an interview with Rick Rubin or something, and sound designer was talking about how, you know, you walk into these studios and you see the big monitors, like not visual monitors, like the big audio monitors, and you think that he's like, you think we'd spend the majority of our time listening to these super $1,000 monitors, right? He's like, no. A lot of times I'm using AirPods, whatever, because you mix down for all these different signals, right? So if 90% of your people are going to be using these shitty AirPods, you better mix for that as well.
Yeah, and it's you know, when dealing with Sean recording music, it's like, okay, yeah, you want it to sound great on the super hi-fi great system, and then you got to take out a little boom box with a cassette tape and see how it sounds on that too. It's crazy. It's difficult. All right, Brian from Video Game Drive-By says, I am of two minds about this episode. I love a good mob story, and this is a decent mob story with a sympathetic character. Kind of feels like a good Humphrey Bogart film. But as part of an ongoing story, the Vorta connection feels just kind of plugged in. I don't want to spoil anything, but it feels like this should have come after some of the revelations we have yet to get to with a different character. So as a standalone, I give it 80 stem bolts. As part of the season, I give it 50. So I guess I split the difference and give this 65 self-sealing stem bolts. Yeah, fair. Kailana Dakmar says, O'Brien got a cat is the best thing I liked about this depressing Torture O'Brien episode by having him betray someone. I think getting a cat is the right answer to all problems. Being a cat person. Harry Pothead says 60 stem bolts. I think the guest actor is unconvincing and badly written. Colomini delivers as he does always, but his effort saves this from being just bad. I can stand mushrooms, but I'm anti-beets.
I like a beat. I like a beat.
I'm like you. I've come to appreciate the beat in the right context.
Like a arugula beet goat cheese salad? Please.
Yeah, beet as part of a salad, like a little bit of a sweetener. Like, I love a sweetener in a salad. So
I also like a beet, like a raw beet is actually in my wheelhouse these days too. You can eat them like apples.
I can't say I've done that. But, you know, times are going to get hard. Maybe we'll be eating beets. Who knows?
Beets and potatoes.
Beets and potatoes. But like, no, I love sweet things in my salad. So like a candied walnut or like one of those
Candy
dried
pecan.
cherry dealies or like that cran thingies.
Craisin?
Right. Craisin. There it is. That's what I'm going for.
Cran thingy. Come on, get out from under the... No, speaking of cats. Come on. No, you're not going to fit there. You're fat. He's going to try. Now he's going to be stuck.
ChatGPT, this isn't being erratic. There's actually a cat there.
It's more ecatic. Let's move forward.
Meow. Okay.
He's stuck. I knew you'd get stuck, you idiot. He wedged himself behind the monitor and lamp. Oh, no, you got to figure it out.
All right.
There's no cat cam back there.
I look forward to all of us winking out because he unplugged the entire room.
No, he BSOD'd me last night. Because his fat butt hit the computer, which shook the GPU, which shut down the whole damn system.
Wow.
Oh, he made it out.
Okay, congratulations.
This has been Cat Corner. Thank you for joining us.
Cat Corner.
Come on.
Hot cat content. We used to have a jingle for that. We should
resurrect
that
we should
jingle.
recycle of all things.
Yeah, well, there's a few of those. Tux's gut just goes past the screen. See, like, I won't let you film me from anything but this, but, like, Tux is like, here it is in all of its glory.
He doesn't care.
Kevin Miles, who regrets having been a patron, says, I don't mind this episode. Deep Space Nine has a habit of trying different types of episodes. I thought Colomini was great, and I liked Nick Tate as well. I got the impression that he was a reluctant criminal. He messed up in his younger years, got involved with this group of criminals, and just couldn't get out. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more about why he ended up here.
Yeah, I mean, a little backstory probably would have went a long way.
At the end, he found a way out and seemed relieved, even though it meant his death. I may be the only one who saw it this way, but isn't that what Star Trek does? The scene at the end with O'Brien and Bashir was heartwarming. It showed a true friendship that has developed between the two. I give this episode 87 self-sealing stem bolts. Yeah, I mean, a little bit of relief. I think that makes sense. I think that's a good observation, and I see it too. Carl Fisher says, I always thought this episode would have been a great backdoor pilot for a gritty crime cop drama themed Star Trek series. It was good in a low-key way in a season full of focus on the main story of Deep Space Nine. It was also an O'Brien episode where it didn't seem like he was tortured in some terrible way to get to the end of the story. Instead, he gets a cat. I think it's fair to say he was a little bit of both. But he didn't get a cat after being, like, you know, mind tortured in prison for a long time.
Also, like, what's the future
times.
of cats? You know what I mean? Like, right now, here's one of the things about your cats. Everybody, people think the main thing with cats is, do you get a lap cat or do you get a cat that kind of is indifferent to you, right? That's the sort of dice roll. But it's not the only dice roll, Keith. I think you can verify this. My first cat that I had on my own, right? Cece is her name. The cleanest cat I've ever had in my life. This cat, even cleaning her litter, the litter never smelled bad. She never smells bad. You smell her, she smells sweet. It's like
Little
the cat.
princess.
Yeah, the cat is just clean as heck. Then Dee Dee's like, normal cat. But then we get Tux, and I love him. But he smells bad. He doesn't clean himself real well. His litter box is dirty and smells. His biological processes are not great. So you kind of want you don't want to get a stinky cat either,
Look, he has a tremendous amount of charm. He's sort of like if Chris Farley were a cat.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, what I'm saying is that you could be one of those people out there that gets a stinky, indifferent cat, which, man, that sucks.
I mean, that's but fun. I mean, Tux is great.
I didn't know. He's very sweet. No, we don't have to litigate Tuxie right now. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm erratic today.
It's erratic. Hibernation Pod just said, green light Borg ship. I didn't even consider that when I went green to celebrate the Eagles. It absolutely looked like Borg had taken over my basement. But
do you have the Borg? We have the Borg thing too, right? The Borg Bluetooth.
Yeah, it's in there somewhere. I need to plug it in, but yeah, no, it's definitely in there somewhere. Because the problem with it, because we reviewed it as a toy on the toy show, is that if you leave it plugged in, occasionally it makes sounds which are very jarring. So I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. So there it is. Anyway, Mysterious Ann says, I don't mind this episode, but it's not a favorite. Listening to your recap, I gained a new appreciation for the scenes with Dr. Bashir. As you pointed out, him saying, I don't know, I'm just glad you're home, is a very honest and earned friendship beat, and I think the scene with Captain Sisko sets that up really well. Sisko helps Bashir realize it's okay for him to be more openly honest and vulnerable and caring for his friend. 70 self-sealing stem bolts for me. Also, go Birds! This has been an absolutely amazing time to be in Philly. I know exactly what you mean about what happens here around Christmas, too. The game brought a great deal of joy to the mysterious household. Odds and ends, my first starring role was Fagin in Oliver. I was in 5th grade in a summer theater camp production. You have to pick a pocket or two, boys. Indeed. Much worse than Keith's pink face as Wilbur was the hair and makeup the choices my high school made my freshman year for The King and I. Yikes. I have had some good conversations with our kids about that, though, so that's something. Yeah, it's certainly within our generation. We've all witnessed and/or been a part of some pretty problematic productions of King and I. There was a rite of passage for us 80s kids. And continues. Mushrooms. Yes. Even raw in a salad, but especially caramelized with some onions on a burger. No.
Look, I'll say this: if you caramelize anything, I'll probably eat it.
It's better, you know. Look, and
I'm not a big onions guy, but you caramelize up some onions, all right.
You and I agree on a great deal. That's going to be a no for me.
All right.
Finally, Mike said he's always wanted to join a crime syndicate. Coincidentally,
did I say that? Sounds like something I would say.
That definitely sounds like something you would say. Coincidentally, I just ordered my Lutheran Crime Syndicate t-shirt from Raygun, a great print shop out of Iowa. The shirt and the story that goes with it are worth checking out. My hope is that it just makes people more aware of the vital work that the Lutheran Services of America and other nonprofits do. But these are scary times for social service providers. Yeah, for sure. And we've talked a little bit offline about the incredible and courageous work you are doing, pushing back on some of the horror that is happening in this world. So thank you for doing that. JD says, where am I? All these mushroom haters here? Jeez. To be honest, making a completely false assertion about someone isn't a straw man, it's flaming pants. That's true. Gee, what a good friend. What a good friend when I'm here and I'm ready to kill you now if I need to. Okay. Yes, that's for us.
Look, you need somebody to tell you when you're being an asshole, and you need somebody to kill you when it's time.
When it's time, when you can't wipe Donnie Brasco, makes so much more sense now than Donnie Darko.
I'd forgotten what Donnie Darko was, and then I went back and I was like, oh man, that's not it.
That's not it. I'm already knowing I'm going to be agreeing with Mike a lot on this one. Well, Mike's point about how he doesn't know who the Orion Syndicate are is semi-valid because they've only been a threat on Deep Space Nine once before, when Quark and Odo climbed the mountain. All other mentions are from the original series and Next Gen. But the big nitpicker for me is that on Next Gen and Deep Space Nine, they talk about the Orion Syndicate and then never show an Orion, which is literally just green body paint. So here's what this episode comes down to for me. It's not a bad episode, it's just a boring one. It does some decent character stuff, but it's just so uneventful for what it's trying to do. 63 self-sealing stem bolts from me. All right, there is our hails from the patron. It is now time to talk about Deep Space Nine. Season 6, Episode 16, Change of Heart, which aired on March 4th, 1998. Hopefully getting a little warmer here in March. The top song...
Wherever you are, I am here, and I'm about to find a picture to put up so I can eat my Starbucks.
I was wondering what you were doing. See, I don't think we're erratic. I think we're chaotic. Now, there's
two things can exist.
Adjectives. Oh, yeah, they can both be true. But I think we're more chaotic. I think that's a better word for us. All right, the top movie, of course, Titanic. Still just like sinking every night, making it happening. Making it happening. Yeah, hold your butts, folks. What was Voyager doing? The Killing Game, Part 1. Which it's interesting because I looked up what's the rating on IMDb for that. It's not as high as I think. I really enjoyed the two-parter, The Killing Game. It was good. So yeah, Mike, talk for a second. I got to reply with the news happening.
Yeah, I'll tell you. Speaking of news, we were embroiled in the Monica Lewinsky scandal. Remember when that was a scandal? Like that's what scandal was. The good old days. Yeah.
Although weirdly, I think we should have cared about it more than we did, but for different reasons than we did.
Sorry, that's me clacking and clicking. That's work. What happened?
No, I'm getting like robots from you.
Robots?
Yeah. Here, I'm gonna refresh.
Okay.
Hold on.
Friends was taking over the rankings. ER was in its heyday. The X-Files all dominating the ratings. Wow, that's a pretty great lineup, right? Seinfeld was nearing the series finale that would air back in May of '98. Marking the end of an era for sitcoms. The X-Files was in its prime. Buffy the Vampire Slayer also in its prime. Man, it was a good time. And of course, Voyager was rocking and rolling. It was a good time to be a sci-fi fan, Keith. You need me to keep going?
Question.
I can keep going.
Yeah, keep going.
Guys, did you know that the Winter Olympics were in Nagano, Japan? They had just wrapped up in February with athletes like Tara Lipinski being household names. Technology, Keith, this is the big one. Did you know? And it sounds like this is ancient, but it's not. This was right when this episode aired. The internet was becoming more mainstream, but DVD players were just hitting the consumer market right now.
That's crazy.
That is crazy town, right? So what is this, 98 we're in? So up until 1990, up until we were 18 years old, our primary media was VHS.
Hold on 1 second.
It's so loud.
I will be very quiet. It's weirdness happening over here, big time.
What is going on?
I'm like getting RFK Jr. from you. Mike.
Yeah, but then you got quiet.
You cannot have vaccines. Right. You cannot have SSRIs. Okay, so Change of Heart was directed by David Livingston, who last directed You Are Cordially Invited. And the episode was written by Ronald D. Moore, the great Ronald D. Moore, which means it's we're going to go from a great writer to a mediocre segment we call... Now Keith, waste your time.
Quick, take a bite of your sandwich.
With trivial trivia. You're not going to be allowed to eat those anymore. All right, so... That's either going to make sense now or make sense when you watch the last 30 seconds of the episode. Now it's almost better if
I showed my mom. Dude, I got to tell you. I showed my mom. So I was going through YouTube. And I subscribed to our YouTube channel. So we had a new video. The video from last week dropped and my mom was here. And showed up. First she did that mom thing where it's like clearly me and you, right? And I put it on and she goes, "Who's that?" And I was like, "It's me." And I let us talk for a little while. We were BSing about some crap. It definitely wasn't Star Trek. So, and then finally she looks at me and she just goes, perfect deadpan. She goes, "You get paid for this?" And I was like, "No, well, no. Paid is a little more specific than I'd get, but."
I mean, we haven't, as a country, we have not raised the minimum wage since the Reagan administration, and we're nowhere near minimum wage, so.
Well, all I can say is, like, well, I'll tell you what, we don't make any money, but we do have to pay taxes. We make enough to pay taxes.
Yeah, we're going to have to deal with that at some point.
I took care of it.
You did?
Yeah, I paid them last time.
Did you really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this year, I don't think anybody works at the IRS anymore, so it probably doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. We just have to shout out the window. I paid!
Trust me.
I paid!
I pay all of my taxes.
I think, no, you know, we'll talk about it off air, but I think we owe, like, 45 Doge.
45,
Dogecoin
great.
or whatever.
Great.
Hey, team. Clearly, there have been some technical challenges during this episode. I've tried to piece things together so that it's fairly seamless. And when we get to the screening room, I'll have the screenshots playing, but our personal videos didn't quite work. They kick in eventually. It was a whole cluster. Please enjoy the episode nonetheless, with my apologies. We do get through it, I promise. All right.
You Doge bag. All right.
Come on. Now, don't waste your time. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. So, this was the 500th episode of Star Trek to air, which is crazy.
What was it?
500th episode of Star Trek to air. So, original series, animated series, Next Gen, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine. This happened to be number 500.
Oof.
Which I feel definitely could have done a bigger thing with, but I think it was more coincidental. So in an interview, Ronald D. Moore confessed that the writers never clearly established the rules of the Ferengi game of Tongo, and mostly made it up as they went along. I think that's pretty fair. The B story of this episode originally involved Rom, Nog, and Prinadora. Do you remember who Prinadora is, Mike?
No.
That is Rom's ex-wife and
right.
Nog's mother.
Yes.
So the plot involved Prinadora arriving on the station and claiming she has come to reconcile with Rom and to get to know Nog.
Okay.
But it turns out she's actually there to hoodwink Rom all over again. I think that's a fantastic concept for an episode. I think that would have been a better B story for sure. Could have been an A story if you want to make a Ferengi episode. Like, that feels interesting. Anyway, so we continue this chaotic segment. Terry Farrell's skin is incredibly sensitive to direct sunlight, which prevented her from participating in most of the events of Rocks and Shoals, which was largely filmed on location. Here, the exterior jungle of the planet was filmed on a controlled set, so she was able to appear without issue. The basic story of this episode was the idea of two officers journeying into a jungle behind enemy lines, and that was inspired by the John Wayne and Ray Kellogg movie, The Green Berets, in 1968, which also starred George Takei, who played Sulu and was not in several episodes of the original Star Trek because he was busy filming this movie.
Interesting.
I thought that was super interesting. The jungles of Sakura were created by the Greens department on a soundstage at Paramount. Shooting in the dense vegetation was so difficult that producer Steve Oster joked they might as well have shot the episode on location. And lastly, this is the first episode to make use of a CGI runabout model, in this case the USS Shenandoah. This allowed for the creation of more complex shots involving the ship weaving through dense asteroid fields and landing on the planet's surface without weeks of miniature work or limiting the angles from which the ship can be shot to conceal the mounting points of the rig used in model filming. And I thought that really stood out in this episode, in the whole sequence there. We're gonna get to it, but yeah, I mean, I think there are pros and cons of switching from models to digital, and because like the original models of like Alien and Star Wars, like they look so damn good, and I think it's hard to replicate the sort of the tactileness of it. However, doing this allows you to do so much more visual storytelling. So that's pretty cool. And you want to know who else probably doesn't want us to do any more visual storytelling today?
But visual...
But, supports us anyway?
There's just a tail. There's just a tail.
Yeah, that's Chris Farley the cat. Cat Farley.
there are patrons, Keith, who financially support the chaos that's taking place right now. They are Bryant, Kimball Biersick, Peter Benk, Frank Ridge, Quark's Bar, Yanba, Ryan Chesley, Yanba, great to see you at the watch along, Andre, Romulan Shoulder Pad Enjoyer, Jamie Lubin, Jason Moe, Joshua Cronin, Mike, Andrew Hayes, Alan, and the mysterious Worf's Boot Shivs. They're big, they're old. Charles Babbage, John Kelly, Keith Blank, Harry Pothead, Anton Thies, Carl Fisher, Alan Gurdon, Deborah Scott, Tren, the Chancellor, the good Chancellor. That was a great sandwich, honey. I love you. Brian from Video Game Drive-By. I love you too, buddy. Nikolay Ivanovich Lobachevsky, YouTube viewer, Odo's Bucket, James Hubbard, Lost Emu, Hibernation Pod, Scotty B, Miri Holcomb, Merritt Neath, CRM Productions, 86 and Company, welcome. JD Makes, Colin Dagan, Chris Mitchell, Frank, Pat, Joshua Cronin, and Kevin, they send us stuff in the mail, y'all. And of course, the Runabout crew, Engineer Maynard, Jerome Gibson, Zontar1, DC, Chanel, welcome, Bullion for Soup, Lutz Kremer, White Eldridge, Kevin Miles. At any level, we appreciate you. Couldn't do it without you. And you know what, Keith? We haven't done it in a few weeks. I'm going to put it up there. And that is new members of the Patreon Hall of Fame. Keith, take it away.
Yes. This week, we welcome Yanba to the Patron Hall of Fame. Very excited. We're going to have to move some of our music from Oops over to
yeah, it's worth it.
This needs to be musically underscored.
Yeah.
Certainly deserves it. But thank you so much, and welcome to the Patron Hall of Fame. We've got some other folks who are coming in next month. All right, so our guest stars this week, ready for the big long list? Todd Waring as Lasarin. That's it. In fact, most of our regulars aren't in this episode. We're getting to the hole in the season where we're starting to run out of money. And the building an entire jungle on a soundstage probably was not cheap. So no more guest stars, and then the guest star is only there by a Zoom. But,
yeah, well, all we have to do is go on Craigslist and see how many cheap reptiles you can rent for the week.
Yeah, well, I'm sure they weren't cheap. It's Hollywood reptiles.
Who's the guy who used to go on the Tonight Show and bring animals with him?
Oh,
because that's what this episode started to feel like. In the first 20 minutes, I was mocking the hell out of this episode. Because we're in the jungle set that we just keep moving some trees around, and then there's just a kimono dragon that just exits that way and then comes in this way. But then there's a beat shift.
Yeah, then it gets all it's a silly episode till it's not. If we're always silly.
Yeah, we are. If only we had a bumper of me being really silly.
You also should probably pull up Most Valuable Lawyer at some point.
What do we need that one for?
Just because it makes me laugh.
Which?
You know which one.
I don't. I can't think of I can't hum it right now.
Well, you valiantly tried to hum it. Remember, it's the one that almost killed my mother. She laughed so hard.
No, I don't remember.
That's amazing.
I don't. Is it accessible anywhere or no? We're gonna have to dig.
It's probably in the Dropbox folder. That's all right. We'll get it for next week.
Yeah.
Next week. All right. So, in our teaser, Dax is deep into the Ferengi-only high-stakes Tongo game. Worf and O'Brien watch from the balcony. Worf is confident that Jadzia is gonna clean him out, but Quark is on a giant winning streak, 206 straight wins.
It's impressive.
Neither Worf nor O'Brien have any idea how to play Tongo. Apparently neither do the producers, but they make a bet. Blood wine versus whiskey. Quark, of course, ends up winning, shocking everyone but O'Brien. Worf then goes and commiserates with Dax. And this is a pretty good line, so it's here on Valentine's Day. Write this one down. I'd rather lose a bet with you than win with someone else. Well played, sir. And later in their quarters, he is rewarded for his chivalry. But only after Worf is done praying to his action figure of Kahless.
Yeah, there's a lot that spoke to me in that scene.
Do you pray to your action figure of yourself before?
I do have them featured, and oh, that's a cool Kalis. I'd like to know more about that figure.
Well, I wonder where that prop is. It's got to be somewhere, because it's a. I mean, I think that's the only screen time we get of the whole thing, but it looks great. Like one of the prop guys, like, you want me to make a what? Awesome.
Keith, I think it's worth showing. So, you know, patrons, and we've seen our patrons in the previous slide, they get to watch me watch each episode in real time.
Yep. Sometimes
on a live stream and sometimes not on a live stream. But when I post them, I try to find a screenshot from the episode that I think speaks to the mood and vibe. And this was the used screenshot. I'll pop it up on the screen.
I think that speaks to Mike's mood and vibe.
Yeah, I think that really captures the essence of what that watch along, how that started.
That sounds about right. So, yeah, they then head off to Deep Space 69. And they play an extended game of...
The best part of that joke was how proud you were of it. You give a nice little pause.
They play an extended game of Chucho, and they both got a full consortium.
Okay. I hope you didn't bet a lot on that game.
Erratic.
Yeah.
The next morning...
But let's talk about that comforter.
I mean... And you know, like, Worf killed that.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, he would not have a replicated, you know, giant comforter. So the next morning, Kira calls them both to Sisko's office. They have a mission. They need to retrieve a message from a Cardassian operative working behind the lines for Starfleet. They've got to go to the Badlands to get it. With most of the cast off on vacation, Worf and Dax have to head out in a new runabout. So in Act 1... Okay, let's hear it.
I was going to pick this bone at the end, and I will, but I'm going to put it here. We're going to discuss later.
We already saw you picking your... Never mind. I love the denial. How dare you, sir? But I did.
You know, sometimes you pick the bone, Keith, and sometimes the bone picks you. So... T-shirt. So...
You will not be able to pick bones anymore.
JT, who is... I'm so close to JD, I call him JT.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Yeah, he's got just so many good T-shirts from us. I hope you're making a killing, buddy. So... Oh, man, I forgot it now. I'm done. Oh, yeah, I'm ready. So we're going to discuss later, you know, the moral decision about, you know, your acts of duty and if you're with your, you know, your partner or whatever and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But let's be honest. You know, and the big punishment is you guys aren't allowed to go on any missions together again by yourselves. They shouldn't have put something upon themselves in the first place. That's an impossible situation. You can't... That's Starfleet's mistake from the very beginning.
Yes, and I think it would not have happened had the Defiant already been gone with most of the people. So they needed like 2 command level officers who had to have a security clearance of a certain level to go on this mission. So I can't imagine that there's other people with a high enough level of security. And, you know, and O'Brien and Bashir were busy playing Tongo, so. But yeah, I think for sure a policy that was overlooked in order to allow this to happen in the first place. So the journey begins with a discussion of where to honeymoon. Worf, of course, wants to do exercise in pain, and Dax wants to be pampered. Room service. She points out that she agreed to do his traditional Klingon wedding, and she gets to pick the honeymoon. Worf is forced to agree. I think that makes perfect sense. They're in a cheery mood. She's clearly warming Worf up a little bit, and he's even developing a sense of humor. Obviously, I think 2 things about this scene. One, I think it is showing some character development for Worf. It is showing how she is helping him, and he's growing a little bit as a character, loosening up a little bit of a character. And from a writing standpoint, you know something horrible is going to happen to them.
But...
Like, you're never that happy in Act 1 without something horrible coming.
I enjoy when the show rewards continued watching, right? And in this case, it makes some older episodes better in retrospect, right? Because I think I complained, maybe we, but I know I definitely complained when Worf was kind of a prick on Ryza and different stuff. Right. And you realize, well, if you don't show some sort of fatal flaws, maybe not fatal flaws, but if you don't show some of the kinks in the armor, chinks in the armor?
Chinks, I believe, in the armor.
Whatever. Some damage to the armor early on, then when they are buffed out later in these episodes and you see the growth, it wouldn't have as much weight. So an official apology to previous episodes where I may have scoffed at some of Worf's bird edges, but it works. I mean,
at the very least, it keeps the story continuing. It wasn't just like he was a jerk for one episode for no reason. Like, it is actually part of the character.
And the same goes for Dax. You know, I think earlier they give her some sort of like, oh, you're a pretty girl, so you fall for the pretty guy on this planet, like rando stuff. But she has found a more. My point is that this relationship has been well developed.
Yes, and it seems to be getting healthier as we move forward, which is great.
Yeah, that's the hope.
So, back on Deep Space Nine, O'Brien has decided he's going to beat Quark at Tongo, damn it. Bashir comes in dressed as James Bond. They have a holosuite scheduled for a really fun follow-up episode to Our Man Bashir, but the real-life Bond people are too litigious to allow that. So, O'Brien convinces Bashir to help him beat Quark with his genetically engineered brain. Back on the runabout, Dax and Worf arrive at the rendezvous coordinates and wait for a transmission from the spy. They make contact, and what he wants is to be extracted. And he says, I have something you want, badly. Information about the Founders. I know how many of them are in the Alpha Quadrant, where they are, and what they're doing.
That is big intel.
Pretty relevant.
It's also a really great concept this episode brings up that they've either not breached before or I just have not really clocked. How interesting to have of course there are going to be Cardassians or anybody who's aligned with or in a tentative agreement with the Dominion that are going to want to defect, right?
Yeah, sure, of course.
But we never really see those stories, and it's so interesting. I'm sure there's maybe some Vorta, maybe even some. Maybe we learn of some, because obviously we've seen that there are Jem'Hadar anomalies biologically. Yep. Obviously, maybe some that don't have the sort of slave gene that want to. It opens up some doors of possibility, even if they don't follow through. Opening the door is always interesting.
Well, and I think that's also true of life. I mean, like, even our greatest adversaries, you know, in a war. Not everybody there is on board with that.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like you think about Russia. Not everybody there is supporting a Putin. Not everybody here is supporting a Trump. Like, we are not monolithic organizations or countries or institutions. So, anyway,
unless it's in the Rocky films, in which case,
of course. Yeah. Well, you know, the 80s and Sylvester Stallone, not known for nuance.
Yeah.
So, Lacerin continues. But now let's talk about what I want. I want out now. You mean defect? The Vorta advisor here is getting suspicious, and he demands to be rescued in 3 days on a Dominion-occupied planet in Dominion space. And in order to do this, he's going to have to be rescued in person in the jungle, and Dax and Worf are forced to commit to the rescue right then and there. And I'm sure this happens in real life. You have to extract an asset in a very inopportune time. There is a beat here. I guess I'll address it later, but like, we don't find out until later that he doesn't give them the information, and that he's using, like, here's this vital information, you know, like, I'm not gonna give you this till you get me out, which I guess makes sense. But if he hadn't done that, then it would have been like, oh, it sucks that we left him to get to die, but the stakes for the Federation weren't that high, beyond the sort of moral stakes of it. But I wish that in this scene, they'd be like, okay, great, we're gonna come get you, what's the information? And he's like, I'm not gonna, just like, give us that couplet where he says, I'm not gonna give it to you until I'm out. so that we're clear on that, because I wasn't clear here whether or not they had the information about the Founders. So I didn't understand the stakes well enough until the final scene where Cisco says, like, we don't have that information now. And a couplet here asking for
it is important,
and denying
because
it would
to
have
be
fixed
honest
that.
with you, I've already forgotten what their mission was in the first place.
Right. And it would have made it I think it would have helped it. It'd be like, okay.
Because we are taking a detour, obviously. Like, this wasn't
this
wasn't
not
plan A.
Not plan A at all, but it's like, I need out, which I got that part, and like they're gonna kill me soon. I got that part, but if we reinforced that the only way you're going to get this vital information is by rescuing me, so that when Worf chooses not to, it's not just that we're letting an asset die, which is bad, already bad, but to now also letting an asset die.
Front loading it would help,
because
it puts a lot of the onus onto Ben Sisko at the end to post date the stakes, right? Through his anger
never
beat.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is never good to retroactively get the stakes in an episode.
That's fair.
Just bad writing. So, there you go. So, in Act 2, O'Brien and Bashir are practicing, but O'Brien has no chance against Bashir. Bashir says, why are you so determined to beat Quark? It's the challenge. That's it, the challenge? That's enough. What do you think? Why do you think I became an engineer? It's the challenge. Besides, I need something to keep my mind off the fact that we haven't been able to afford to have Rosalind on the show for like six
months.
episodes.
She's been gone.
6 months has been gone. Yeah, it's poor Mike, but Jen keeps coming back.
Yeah, we don't have a daughter though. That's like that means he's also not seeing both of his children.
That's true.
The baby too.
Yeah, that's tough.
That baby's grown up.
I know. Gonna be like, gonna be an ensign next week.
And I guess what better thing to do than we might as well gamble.
I mean, he's got nothing else to do. I mean, what
He's
do you
rocking
do?
those
You do
layers,
a stupid,
though. He's rocking those
stupid
layers.
podcast with us.
That's true.
Yeah. I would need that layer to be real thick.
If you've watched the first 45 minutes of this episode, you know how my mental state is. So.
I mean, this has been our sloppiest episode in like
quite a while, like 2
seasons.
weeks. Yeah.
In 2 weeks. So Worf and Dax arrive near the planet and have to get through gaps in the Dominion detection perimeter by flying through an asteroid field. And wow, can they do more now with the ships with the ships and the asteroids being digital? That sort of a sequence is standard fare now, but wow, that was great in 1998. So they get through and they land on the planet 20 kilometers away from the rendezvous point deep in the jungle. So they're going to have to hike on foot for 2 days to get there, which is, that's a lot. I mean, 10 kilometers on foot is not a big deal in 2 days, but when you're going through a jungle, that's tough.
Oh, I didn't get the shot here, but one of my favorite shots, and JD mentioned this as well, is when they open this door, that one POV shot, and they're like, just get every bush we got in the back. Just fill it with bushes.
Yeah. I did like the airlock sequence of 2 doors leaving the runabout. I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, like, this whole thing it's so obviously a soundstage, and I wish that it weren't. I understand with the limitations of dealing with Terry's sun allergy, and also just from a production standpoint. You have only so much light, you have all these other elements that you can't control, and this really makes it easier. But I don't think the soundstage technology was still not super great. So
important, because I brought it up the last time. Okay, so it would have been available. Okay. They missed right here, Keith.
What's that?
So 1996, the original Tomb Raider came out. They should have made a movie right away in 98. Because look at her. Terry Fowler she is Lara Croft.
Oh, she would have been a great Lara Croft.
Right?
Absolutely.
This is like prototype Tomb Raider movie right here.
No question.
Yeah.
Oh, well, look, we can make a coming out of retirement or something. Let's do it.
Actually, it doesn't even look that bad, because when they do location shots, usually it's really oversaturated or overlit and kind of overexposed. Yeah. All they really had to do was pull the saturation down a little bit, because it's just the greens are a little too green,
Yeah, I think it's the lighting. Like it is better than it usually is, for sure.
And they keep throwing that same lizard in. I hope I catch it in at least one screenshot.
Yeah, lots of there's they what was it? John Hannah is the
John
guy you're thinking
Hannah
of?
or something Hannah.
John
Not Daryl Hannah.
It was Daryl Hannah came with her giant snake. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, like all of those like working animals after like Tiger King and understanding more about that industry, it's more like, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. But anyway, well, this is not a primate.
Jack
Hanna.
Well, there's a bunch of people actually. Joan Embry was one. Jim Fowler was one. On Carson. There's Jack Handy. No, Jack Hanna. Jack Hanna. I think you're right.
Jack Hanna. Yeah. Haha! Look at me pulling random information from my brain.
He was the guy.
So they're going to have to hike on foot for 2 days to get there. So in Act 3, in the jungle, Dax and Worf link something together with 25 joules of technobabble. Terry has a lizard walk right through her as she does this, and I thought she did tremendous face work to get the lizard going through there. And, you know, I don't think they planned on the lizard like literally walking through the shot, so I thought that was like a great little found moment.
Oh, they must have it. I don't know. That had to be completely.
Well, I mean, it was supposed to be there, but I in the script it does not say it literally walks through her arms. Who knows? So they've hidden their life signs from the Dominion security net, and they head out on their journey. Back on Deep Space Nine, O'Brien and Bashir talk their way into the Ferengi-only game. Quark is not afraid of Bashir's super brain. And he says, "Don't try to scare me with your genetically engineered intellect of yours, Doctor. Tongo is more than just a number crunching. They have yet to create the computer that can master this game, because it has no rules." Later in the game, everyone is out except for Bashir and Quark knows exactly how to get under his skin. He picks at Bashir's still being in love with Dax, which is new information we're getting here.
Yeah, we haven't touched on that since what, season 2?
Yeah, it's been a while. So Quark says, "You know, you go through a lot of ups and downs in my business, and there are days when the profits are down and the customers are scarce, and when you begin to wonder if you'll ever see another strip of latinum. But then Jadzia comes in and flashes that smile of hers, and suddenly things don't seem so bad after all." Bashir says, "I know exactly what you mean. Exactly. You know, sometimes she'll walk past the infirmary and just wink at me, and my whole day becomes a little brighter." Quark says, "And you know what's really sad? What really keeps me awake at night? She's out of reach because we let her go." I suppose so, but some things are just not meant to be. And of course, Bashir is sunk. Quark wins, and Bashir and O'Brien are forced to give up and drink. And interestingly, that is the end of that storyline. The B story ends in Act 3.
Thank God.
You weren't feeling... Yeah, I mean, that was
the most interesting wrinkle of it, because I think
for sure.
But they pre-post the interesting commentary this beat has on the main kind of thematic work that has yet to happen. You know what I mean? Like all of the sort of relationship meat comes later in the episode, and we get a commentary on it here.
Well, we get a commentary on how important Jadzia is to everybody, and how everybody is in love with her. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it feels a little bit like filler. The whole thing,
it is 100%.
And I think the B story that they'd proposed, bringing in Rom's ex, that seems much more interesting to me here. It is interesting to know that Bashir's still in love with Dax, and like that is interesting. But we sort of like we drop it here. We don't. Pick it up.
I think that's overselling it a little bit. I think and maybe I'm wrong, but kind of the way I interpreted it post facto is it's more of a commentary on there are people who enter and exit your life, and your relationship with changes them, right? But like there's always that little bit of you, right, that holds on to an idea of the feeling. of, right? I don't know that he's full out in love with her, but there's a part of him that still has those feelings kind of.
Yeah, or a third thing, she represents a missed opportunity. She represents like the thing I could have had, but I didn't.
Well, that interprets that assumes she had any interest, which it didn't seem like she did. So I don't know. I think both of them are kind of reading it the room wrong, but
however they care to
something that you know, a person you had pursuits of, but then, you know, the relationship either didn't go that way or you chose not to or whatnot. Like,
yeah, we all have people like that in our lives.
And I think it's really interesting, right? You know, and I'll talk about this later, but it's, you know, marriage and long-term relationships, even relationships, friendships, and things like that. There are junction points where you have to decide whether you're going to continue in this type of relationship or on this road of the relationship where you're going to change course.
Yep.
And sometimes those decisions are made mutually. Sometimes they are made independently.
Yep.
But it's the series of those decisions that chart the course of a relationship, and each one of them, be it through sacrifice or decision or tragedy or whatnot, really define the thing. And that's what's, I'll talk about this later, but that's what I think is bizarre about marriage, magical and bizarre, is that you're making decisions based on a road you've yet to go down, right? And so it's cool to look back along the way at any one of those individual decisions or moments and recognize that it is past, and yet it has affected you and maybe currently still does, even though it's no longer part of the larger tapestry. That was a lot of words.
Yeah. Wow. There it is.
Of course, it's really just Quark effing with them, but...
Well, you're using it to... I mean, it's like what we do when we're playing video games, and you know, you're starting to get beat too many times in a row, and you're like, hey, just wondering, what's your favorite type of boob? Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh, and then that's a great way to win a video game.
2 points I'll make on that.
Mm-hmm.
One, I guess what they're saying here, if we're to be very liberal on this B plot and to really give it its desserts, is that even with master intellect and research and preparation, matters of the heart can always override your most, even the clearest thinker.
The heart and the brain are always at war, which is the theme of the second part of this at the same time. So
as to your point about the long game, see, Jen and I used to make decisions, right? We had to have you have to have at least one black and white rule. And so somewhere along the line, we decided that rock, paper, scissors, best of three, would determine important things. Like if we could not come to a consensus. Often it had to do with our dog. Often it had to do with our dog when it was very cold outside and we couldn't decide who was going to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning to take the dog out.
Mm-hmm.
Did I start establishing false patterns of my play and throwing down scissors a lot or whatnot to get her into the habit of throwing down paper so that when it really came to the hard thing, I knew in my back pocket I had a rock to win? Yes, I did. And did it work? Yes, it did.
You needed a trump card to save it for the big ones?
I did like a 2-year false flag operation, sabotaging my own game just so that I knew in a pinch.
So when it came down to like, should we have children? Rock!
No, I wasted it. I wasted it on a cold, that's my point, is that it was like a cold dog walk, and I was like, I just can't do it tonight, and so I threw that rock out, and I was like, damn, I blew it.
Every piece of that sounds so much like you. So we head back to the jungle, and in the script there is a long montage of hiking and survival, some of which had to be cut due to budget, but we do see a giant snake and another lizard. They finally stop for the night, and we learn a little tidbit that I don't think we knew at this point, that the Klingons do not like the cold, much like Cardassians. They listen to some creature's mating call, and it's romantic until the screams stop. Something is close. They quickly hide everything and prepare for battle, and we find out it's a Jem'Hadar patrol. I think this is a missed opportunity to not show the Jem'Hadar's cool cloaking device. or cloaking ability, perhaps as a budgetary, because they had so many plants. But there's a brief fight, and our heroes win the battle, but Dax has been shot. She'd be totally fine if it weren't for the anticoagulant in the Jem'Hadar weapons, and she can't stop the bleeding. And great detail, great continuity, because you remember this is how we lost Kike on the ship. Was also not being able to stop bleeding from a small wound. Brutal. Very Foundersy to pull something like that. And Dax says, "It looks like I didn't take the full burst. The hemorrhaging isn't too bad yet. Just keep pumping me full of painkillers and we'll be on our way. Moving could make the bleeding worse. Staying here isn't an option. Someone's going to have to start looking out for them when we can't, looking for them, meaning the dead Jem'Hadar. When they don't check in, I'd rather take my chances on foot." So they head off into the night.
Now, I clocked it that this was like 28 minutes into the episode. This is when we finally get the
inciting incident, sort of. So in Act 4, it's the next morning, and Dax is in bad shape. But they're still 12 kilometers from the rendezvous point. She is slowly bleeding out. She tries to make a joke, but Worf is no longer in a joking mood. And he is mad at himself for letting his guard down. "I was trying to be something I am not by letting down my guard. By ignoring my duty, I allowed my wife to be injured and I put the entire mission in jeopardy. It will not happen again." Which is sad. But it's true. I mean, this is why you don't go on a romantic rescue mission, to pick up an asset. So they keep walking, and Dax is now really in trouble. But she's bravely soldiering on. Worf keeps giving her blood, but she can't continue and collapses. Interesting that you can just sort of like give plasma. They have like, it's a little bit like that joke on Space Quest, where remember that old game?
Roger Wilco.
No, not that one. Like King's Quest, but Space Quest on the PC.
Yeah, it's Roger Wilco.
Is it?
Yeah, his name is he was a space plumber.
Oh, okay, it was. Yeah, all right. But anyway, so they have a gag where
custodian,
like you
space
store
custodian.
Yes, where you acquire dehydrated water.
Yes,
for survival, which I thought was really funny. So in Act 5, she tells him that he has to go on without her, and Worf agrees. And I wrote down, apparently the defector has held back the vital information until his rescue, but we didn't get that couplet. It's a tough scene. They both pretend like she'll still be alive when he gets back and she can be rescued, but they both know it's not true. And they both know that Worf is leaving her to die. And she says, "It's been a good 2 months, hasn't it?" "Yes," says Jadzia. "I want to tell you how much. Worf, just kiss me and go." And so, I think it's good subtext acting and the writing there that they don't acknowledge that this is like a death sentence, him leaving her.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
What's I think even more interesting about it, I'm sorry, I'm behind in the shots, is, there's so many of these episodes where they build like to the death of somebody and you just know they're not going to die, right? Like there's no risk of losing Dax in this episode. And yet, and I can only chalk it up to the performances. It's really the only thing, is they're so compelling. The chemistry and the performances are so compelling and grounded that whether you believe or not, we talked, I think it was last week, about how there was a lack of, not drama, stakes, but threat.
Yeah, menace.
And there is none here, but you still feel it even though you know the outcome, right?
Right.
I actually didn't think he was going to come back. I thought there was going to be a Deus Machina type of situation, but I was.
Yeah, well, and I think that the best part of this episode
is they sell that. They sell the dude that you would believe that Worf would choose duty here.
Well, and it's like I think I always knew he was going to go back for her, but what I like about this resolution is he doesn't get off scot-free. that there are real stakes for this decision.
Yeah.
You know, he makes the obvious decision, the decision we would all make, but like it's not like oh well, good thing things worked out okay. No, they didn't. And it might literally have cost millions of lives, but we'll get there. So Worf charges off into the jungle. We don't know for how long, and we hear Worf's heart beating, which I thought was pretty cool. They could have gone harder with that. But he eventually makes the decision. He turns back to rescue Jadzia. Later, they get back to Deep Space Nine, and Sisko arrives in the infirmary to check on Dax. She's gonna make it. But Sisko talks to Worf. And he says, Lasarin's dead. Intelligence intercepted a transmission saying he was killed trying to re-enter the base on Sakara. And he asks, could you have made the rendezvous? Yes, but you turned back to save Jadzia. Yes. Were you aware that the man's information could have saved millions of lives? Yes. As your captain, it's my duty to tell you that you made the wrong choice. I don't think Starfleet will file any formal charges. Even the secret court-martial would run a risk of revealing too much about their intelligence operations. But this will go in your service record. And to be completely honest, you should know that they'll probably never give you a command of your own after this.
That's a consequence.
Yeah, I understand.
Because they offered him one earlier, right?
Well, we've certainly...
He flirted with it.
He has been in command of the Defiant many times, but he has not been offered a captaincy yet.
Although...
But that's... Yes.
Loose wormhole, but I should have brought this up earlier when you were talking about this. But
nobody wants a loose wormhole.
Because...
Loose wormhole.
Yeah, because that guy never gives us the info, right? Yeah, yes, he could have saved millions of lives. He could have this, he could have that. He could have been bullshitting. Right? So you're going to risk some of your high-level crew. Like, we have no collateral that says any of the information he has is verifiable or real or worth it. We're just going to...
Well, but you have a relationship with him before. So, like, obviously he has been feeding them information of enough value that they would do this.
And they would get suspicious of him, so he would... Okay. All right, I retract.
So, Sisko continues, I've issued new orders stating that you and Jadzia are not to be assigned to missions on your own ever again. And as you pointed out correctly, never should have been. But then Sisko says, one last thing. As a man who had a wife, I can tell you that if it had been Jennifer lying in that clearing, I don't think I could have left either. You know, classic Sisko. Gonna kick your ass, but then understand where you're coming from. So Worf goes to Jadzia's bedside as she wakes up, and she finds out what happened, and she knows the sacrifice that he made for her. Lots to talk about in terms of Worf's decision-making, but we're gonna do that in a little segment we call...
I just wanted to get that screenshot because I thought it was special.
Oh, it's a good screenshot. You just want to put up the shirt for a while again.
Yeah.
Also, that's the wrong button.
Well, I mean, it is.
Erratic. Erratic. Okay, so your punishment is now you have to sing the AlamarEmmys song.
I don't even know how to go back in time, to be honest with you.
No, don't go back. No. There's no going back.
I'll do the guy's face like when you animated him. AlamarEmmys, there once more. AlamarEmmys, it's AlamarEmmys time.
Oh, it's everything I hoped it would be. Somebody please make a gif of that.
I wish my microphone wasn't shaped this way. Oh, boy.
It needs to be somebody's ringtone.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Best moment, Mike.
I think there's a lot of good moments, but I think that moment... Oh, man. Okay, so I think there's a great case to be made for their moment when they make the decision for him to leave.
Right.
I think that's beautiful. And they do yeoman's work, like I said, to to play the peril, even though we kind of don't think she's gonna die. But that's not the moment I'm picking. I'm picking the end moment when Jadzia wakes up, because what I think is really cool about this episode and really cements it home is and her performance across the board is excellent in this episode. There is a beat when he tells her what happened and she realizes that sacrifice where she is horrified. And it's brief and you see it in pain because she's imagining the consequences. She's imagining she can't believe, and yet she does, and yet it makes her love him more. There's so much that happens in that moment of realization that I think elevates the episode, elevates the themes of the episode, and would not exist without the performance of Terry Farrell here. And JD, I believe, might have been Jason, someone in the watch along reminded me that I was skeptical of her acting chops early.
Yeah.
I don't recall being a hater, but I stand to often...
and of their relationship.
Yes. Well, I just thought that she was a little jokey when they first started, but...
Yeah.
I don't remember being critical of her acting in the beginning, but if I was, and I believe... of course, you would tell me the truth. Cool, good, because I was dead wrong, and I'll say it. She is frigging excellent. I think it's a tour de force performance. Michael Dorn not to be messed with either in this episode. A lot of it is also their incredible chemistry. Yeah. And just multi-layered, three-dimensional relationship they've built here. But that's the moment. That moment where she realizes all that happened and doesn't have any lines about it. It's just all right here.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think it is, the resolution is better than the journey that it took to get there. I think the last 5 minutes of the episode are the best parts of the episode. So it's that scene, it's the scene with Sisko, it's and it's also the lift getting to here, the development of Worf, who at this point has been on more episodes of Star Trek than anyone in history, right? And the growth in Worf to make this emotional decision. Because of anybody that we know, the most likely character to leave someone behind for the good, for the greater good, for the mission, the guy most tied to duty and honor, the most likely person to leave Jadzia there is Worf. And so it's a little bit this episode, but it's the work that got us here to give weight to that decision. Because if it were like anybody else, it'd be like, yeah, duh, we would never even consider that they wouldn't do that. But I like that. Sisko maybe, but it's
go back not so many episodes when he was dealing with his son, right? His flesh and blood, and he was willing to all right, well, you got... You know.
That's true. I retract that. Sisko would have left her.
I'm not even talking... I'm talking about Worf. Worf and his son.
Oh, yeah, Worf never gave a crap about Alexander.
Right, and I mean, it's like when you're forced into situations where you have to prioritize two loves and two duties, right? That's what this is.
Well, it's an impossible situation. Yeah. So that's...
It's that train tracks thing, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, great sort of resolution there. We don't need to play the stem bolts bumper because we already played it.
Unfortunately, I don't know that I can get
we cannot avoid it.
The graphic without... Right, I can. I can do it. Okay.
Oh, we did it. Okay.
Spoiler alert, the timestamps will be wrong because Keith only scrubs for the...
No question.
Yeah.
I mean, they're rarely right to begin with.
Yeah, no, I do often go in and change them. Yeah, so I'm going to go on a whole little kind of conversation about what I love about this, and what it sparked in me. I don't want to... The episode might not have earned all of this introspection, but I guess I'm going to layer on top, and then I'll read my little summary that I made. I've said this from the beginning. Marriage was not a thing I wanted to do. Not because... Well, just because I never saw a good one modeled, right? Even the good ones that I had seen in my life were only good in their perceived success, and that perceived success was only in their longevity, right? Like you got some medals because you've been married for 30 years, even if you despised each other or whatever the thing was. And so somewhere along the line, and I think it was mostly meeting my wife, I realized that like you define every relationship in your life, your friendships, your familial relationships, your marriage, should you choose to get married, is defined by you, right? There is a capital M marriage where you grow up and there's all these people who think they can tell you what it is, but that's not true. And remember, when I talk about my marriage, that goes for any long-term relationship, domestic partnership. It doesn't have to be, even, and I am in a monogamous marriage, but even relationships that are more complex, I don't want to say that, or that are different, right?
Structured
differently, doesn't mean they don't. Those are all based in some sort of rule set, right? In some sort of agreed upon
relationship.
Confined, that's what a relationship is, right?
Yeah.
So, but so you front load so many promises, right? Many marriages do. Not all, but many marriages front load so many promises that you can't possibly promise to keep. A promise is something that you say come hell or high water, right?
Right.
And what I've come
the vows you make.
Yeah, what I've come to find is your marriage is being built and defined in its continued existence, right? Like I said before, you don't know how you interact or how you get over some challenges until you face those challenges. That in turn rebuilds your relationship, redefines it, reframes it, and then from that point forward, you move again and you go to the next stretch of road with new experience. It's like growing up, but now you're doing it within a different, and friendships are the same way, right? Like our friendship is completely different than it was when it began because of what we've done on the roads in between. And what's great is that Worf as a character is somebody who seems so rigidly structured and predefined. His beliefs are predefined by his race, by his upbringing. But not till he meets Jadzia, and she challenges him, and she makes him come to terms with some of the hypocrisy in his beliefs and in his culture, that he finds his sense of humor, finds these different things. And I think the heartbeat scene here is such an incredible sci-fi exploration of that moment in a relationship, in a marriage, where you say, oh, you're right, I am going in and out of focus crazily, where you say, holy crap, I didn't know I had that in me. Holy crap, I didn't know I felt that way. Love is this word, we think we know what love is when we're 8 years old and have a crush on the girl across the street. You think that's what love is. Love is continually redefined every day, right? In your life, with experience, with time, with loss. And until he was faced with all those things, in this moment that we get to see on this episode, he surprised himself, right? And he realized, and he has a great line to Cisco that really impacted me too, where he says, yes, even weighed against the potential loss of life of making this decision, I still chose her because together we might be made for more. We might be able to we can save more lives together than it was a great moment that it made me realize every day of my life and every day of my marriage, good, bad, and in between, I'm zooming out and you're seeing things contextually and the bigger picture. And I said it when I got married, and I stand by it. It's like you're going into this dark roller coaster ride, right? Where there's all these twists and turns, and this crazy roller coaster, but it's inside of a building, and you're standing on the outside in line, and you just don't know. And so the best thing you can, and you already got a ticket, you're getting on. So the best thing you can do is pick the person you think will be most fun on the ride with.
Yeah.
I always think that's kind of my way I look at it. Anyway, let me quickly read my little thing here that I wrote down. I think it's Change of Heart offers a thoughtful exploration of marriage and relationships without falling into the predictable romantic tropes. Instead, it highlights how love manifests through action and experience, revealing itself in unexpected moments. The emotional core lies in Worf's difficult decision, underscoring the idea that love sometimes requires personal sacrifice, chemistry between Dorn and Farrell cannot be denied. It's particularly compelling as their performances both bring depth and authenticity to this relationship. I think it, along with the father-son relationship of Ben and Jake of earlier seasons, it's kind of fallen off, are the strongest relationships in the series for me. Their interactions strike a balance between humor, tenderness, and the weight of shared duty, combined with the shared duty of their relationship, makes their climax hit even harder. That said, the episode takes a bit too long to find its footing. I think the pacing drags a lot in the beginning. It almost to a point. I think the recurring use of live reptiles and set-dressed backlot verges on unintentional comedy due to the frequency and somewhat random placement. Still, didn't detract too much from the overall tone. The B-plot is pretty much unnecessary, adding little to the main narrative, though it does offer some commentary on romantic entanglements from the past. Ultimately, this episode stands out for its grounded portrayal of love as a series of choices and sacrifices cemented by the performances of Dorn and Farrell. Overall, despite the slow start, I still feel very strongly about the episode, I think, because it just touched me in a personal way. I'm going to give it 79 stem bolts.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was very long-winded.
Yeah, well, that's what we do here. Yeah, it's interesting. It's all of your thoughts about marriage and your thoughts on that type of relationship, and I think your concept of pick someone you want to go on the ride with is a really good way to do that, because you don't know where the ride is going to go, and as I've found out through my marriage and through my life, is that you don't know what the ride is going to be, and in some ways part of the mystery of the ride is the mystery of the relationship. Mm-hmm. So it's not just the external, but it's also like, all right, so you're gonna be surprised by what the best version of a relationship is going to be, and ways that you because if it's going well, you are both growing and changing. And what we find with Worf here, Worf he struggles with being static as a person, as a character, and the when you come to grow, and almost more importantly, you come to accept the growth, and you come to accept the change. Because like for Worf, and I identify with him a lot like this, like it's not only that things are changing and things are growing, but it's about the acceptance of change and the acceptance of growth. That is really where you find happiness, right? Because like things are going to change, and if that prevents you from being happy, if you're not able to adapt and grow and be okay with things not being the way you expected it to be, with you go in with you make vows, right, which I think is kind of foolish, right, during the ceremony, and you because you just don't know what the final version of this is going to be until you're dead, right? And so for me, what has the greatest thing that I have gained from my marriage is the acceptance of three things. Coming to terms and the acceptance with who I actually am, versus the way I perceived myself or would wish that I would be. The acceptance of who she is, based on, as opposed to what I perceived or what I expected. And the acceptance of what the relationship is, beyond what you expected it to be. And coming to a place of acceptance of all three of those has been the key to the most growth and the most happiness. And so that's sort of what it triggers for me. And I don't know exactly how that applies to Worf and Jadzia, but that's where my brain went.
I think he made a decision, right? I'm going to leave because that's what you do. I'm going to go save the person. And then he realized that he had changed, and his relationship compelled him to do something other. And I think you bring up a great point, because I said this early, and I think I can articulate it better now. A lot of the modeling I had growing up, and I think still exists today, is that, oh, you've been married for X amount of years, your marriage must be successful. Now, length is not a predeterminant of success.
No,
right?
No.
So it's kind of like geology, right? You got these tectonic plates, and everybody, they look like they just sit there, but it's not true. It's constant friction, right? And eventually, there's enough friction that there's a eruption. Now, it doesn't have to be violent, but if you just look at the eruption, right? A lot of marriages stop there that are having conflict, right? They stop at the eruption, and so it's constant, just lava. But if you take a step back and zoom out and you let the lava flow, it recreates new Earth, right? Not to get into your business, but your marriage in many ways was successful in that it helped define the relationship. Both people grew, learned about themselves, and that led to those points I said along the way where you can just brute force it and be like, no, we said we're married, so we stay married. Or you say, oh, here's a chance where we can grow individually and strengthen our bond as a relationship.
No question. And I think that is, whether it ends horribly or it stays and you're unhappy, you don't get peace. You don't get peace internal through being static. You don't get peace through strength. You don't get peace through rigidity. You get peace through acceptance. You get peace through letting the lava flow where it needs to flow and figure out what to do then. And that is how you get peace. And for me, I'm incredibly grateful that, where our lava flew, right? It turns out that the relationship that we expected was not the relationship that was best for us, but arriving at
you got a cool little different island.
Yeah, like the better relationship looks different than I expected, but goddamn, is it better?
Right.
And I'm sure as time goes on, that will continue to change and continue to grow and continue to develop. And I think that, that's a much healthier and happier version than what the expectation was. And so I think that I'm very grateful for that and learning.
Would she let you die in the forest, though?
She would never have gone into the forest with me.
It does not sound. Yeah, does not sound like her honeymoon.
She'd be like, no, we're not.
This is why we bought a house.
We're not gonna rescue somebody from intelligence officer. If you want to do that weird ass stuff, you do that with Mike. I hope you make it back. Whatever, I'm staying here. Yeah. Which I think is accepting of both of our personalities. Okay, so I wrote it down before you said it. Also, 79 self-sealing stem balls.
Well, folks, I mean, if you want to see a relationship grow,
yeah, there it is. I mean. Into the chaos that is our show. Thank you so much for watching.
No, we're talking now. No, this is just a podcast now.
Oh, here we go.
Someone asked me, oh man, I don't want to get in trouble here, get into the weeds here, but someone asked me, not so long ago, if you or your wife was to discover, right, that you're transsexual or that, and someone transitioned or whatnot, and there was still a sexual chemistry or whatnot, would you leave them? Would you separate? And I said, honestly, and I think this is growth, I think there was probably a time in my life where I think I'm not saying I would have acted a certain way, but I would have thought, for sure, yes, we would probably, I'd let them go do whatever. But the more I'm in this relationship with my wife and time equity and growth and stuff, you realize the importance of how deep some of this goes. I mean, no, I don't think so. If we were still rocking and rolling, I mean, obviously I'm not in that position, so I can't say, but if nothing else was changed, obviously that would be a huge change for our lives and for individual persons, but no. You know what I mean? It's like... Yeah, no, and I know plenty of couples who have done that and are still very happy together. And because that's one thing we haven't mentioned, right? Yes, there's the growth and the change individually of your relationship, but obviously as people, you will continually change and grow and learn new things about yourself and change, right? So that's not always compatible with another person. I think you alluded to this. That is often the misconception about marriage that I never really understood, was that, well, what if I change, right? What if everything we agree upon right now and then we change and I don't feel that way anymore? you're just forced to be together? No. If you change and you're no longer compatible, now you go separate ways. I just think I think the marriage isn't as scary as people make it.
Well, it is or it isn't based on the boundaries that you put on it.
Yep.
I mean, it's like it's holding water in your hands. You know, like if you try to hold it tight and you try to like force it to be what you thought it was supposed to be, you're gonna be miserable and you're gonna be wet. And it's like anything else. You got to let stuff grow, and continue to be open to new experiences and new expectations.
Just unplugged you. I can't hear anything you're saying.
Amazing. That's great.
Well, start the tag. I'll get back plugged in by the time we get to the end.
All right. Well, anyway.
The other way to have a successful relationship, marriage or otherwise, you just unplug sometimes.
Just unplug.
Sometimes you just 100%. Don't listen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, how many texts do you get back from me? Uh-huh.
If you had to guess, dear reader, who sends the most texts? The most unrequited texts? Do you think it's Mike or do you think it's Keith? I think it's pretty clear after this episode.
I honestly don't think we send a lot of unrequited texts to each other. I think we always reply.
We're pretty mutual, yeah.
I ignore our other thread significantly.
I sure wish I could.
I hop in every 30 or 40 texts, but
one day I'd love to go down that road again, Keith, and remind some of the things you said to me in the beginning about that whole relationship and other text and how you really didn't quite know what you were jumping into.
I never do. I'm like water. I'm the lava. I flow where it goes. You know what I mean?
I lava you, Keith. I lava you.
Oh, thanks, buddy. All right, so
this was unhinged, and I apologize. I didn't expect it to be this way.
Erratic. All right, so thank everybody for watching, and if you stuck through, I mean, I'm sorry. We will see you back next week with Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night.
What's it called?
Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night.
That's just too much.
I don't know. We're gonna find out. Yeah. So we'll see. But give all the things. All the blah 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 spiel to them. This has been Get the Mic. Watch Deep Space Nine. Thank you for watching K&M Entertainment. If you enjoyed our
Can I unsubscribe?
Nonsense, please like and subscribe. You're stuck, buddy. Or become one of our patrons at patreon.com/KNM.
What's the difference between the end and 45 minutes in the middle?
Because only JD watches the last 90 seconds.
That'll be the tag.
Hey, JD.
Thanks, buddy. You're the only one.
Very much appreciate it. Mike puts all of our best stuff just for you. We might as well come to your house and do our best stuff for you.